Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to another session of Ask Dr. Saleem. In this series, we take your questions and we post them to Dr. Saleem. They can be regarding Islam, Quran, Ahadith, or anything related to religion. You can ask your questions in English or Urdu. The answers will be given in English unless specified otherwise. You may also either raise your hand to ask your question, or if you'd like to remain anonymous, you can post them in the chat. And so with that, let's get started. Our first question of the day comes from Shabnam. Shabnam, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mariam. Assalamu alaikum, sir. मुझे पूछना था कि सफ़ा और मरवा के दरमियान जो सही है सर, ये उम्रा का पार्ट है या ये एडिशनल नफली इबादत है? क्योंकि गालिबन हज का तो ये पार्ट है।
हज और उम्रे दोनों में ये नफली इबादत है।
राइट सर, राइट सर। आपको और क्वेश्चन नहीं है तो मैं दूसरा क्वेश्चन पूछ लूं सर?
We have enough time, so you can ask another question.
थैंक यू सो मच सर। मुझे आपने कुरानिक हिस्ट्री पे काफ़ी ज़्यादा काम किया है। मुझे पूछना था कि क्या जो कुरान की तफसीर है, क्या सहाबा के दौर में किसी ने प्रॉपर इसकी तफसीर की, या ये कि इसकी जो तफसीर है गालिबन मुझे किसी ने बताया कि ये तो कुछ काफ़ी सालों 100-150 साल बाद नॉन अरब किसी ने अजमी था जिसके ये पहली तफसीर हुई, जिसकी वजह से डिफरेंस ऑफ ओपिनियन आ रहा है। तो काइंडली आप इस पे गाइड कर दें प्लीज।
नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है। असल में जो तफसीर का तरीका हमारे यहाँ रहा है वो ये है कि जो नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम या उनके सहाबा से मनकूल कोई चीज़ थी तो ताबईन ने उसको रिकॉर्ड किया है। तो ये बुनियादी तौर पे ताबईन हैं, जैसे इकरमा हैं, मुजाहिद हैं, सुद्दी हैं, ये सब वो हैं जो सहाबा के शागिर्द हैं जिन्होंने नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के या सहाबा के ओपिनियंस को रिकॉर्ड किया है। और वो ओपिनियन ज़ाहिर है कि मुख्तलिफ सहाबा की बाज़ दफ़ा आरा होती थी जो आपस में इख्तलाफ भी रखते थे, और बाज़ दफ़ा वो इख्तलाफ रिजॉल्व नहीं होता था क्योंकि उनको मौका नहीं मिलता था कि नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के सामने पेश करके उस इख्तलाफ को दूर करें। तो फिर उसी तरह से वो ट्रांसमिट होती रही हैं। और फिर ये आके जिन्होंने आपको बताया होगा उन्होंने ठीक बताया कि तबरी हैं, तबरस्तान से उनका ताल्लुक़ था, उन्होंने उनको जमा किया। उनका इंतकाल होता है 310 हिजरी में, तो आप ये कह सकते हैं कि तीसरी सदी के अवाखिर में ये उनकी किताब लिखी गई जामिउल बयान के नाम से। ये कोई 30 जिल्दों में किताब है और इसमें ताबईन के अक़वाल हैं। अक़वाल का मतलब है उनकी स्टेटमेंट्स हैं, उनकी आरा हैं कुरान मजीद की मुख्तलिफ आयात के बारे में, और वो बाज़ दफ़ा सही बयान हुई हैं, सही से मुराद ये कि सही ट्रांसमिट हुई हैं, और बाज़ दफ़ा ज़ाहिर है क्योंकि ट्रांसमिशन में कमज़ोरी रही है। तो ये वजह ये नहीं है कि अजमी होने के नाते ये कोई इख्तलाफ पैदा हुआ है। उन्होंने तो असल में खुद अपनी तरफ से कुछ नहीं किया, उनको तो जो मौसूल हुआ है उसको उन्होंने ज़ब्त कर दिया है।
राइट सर, थैंक यू सो मच सर।
Thank you very much. Baran Nashur, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Sir, my question is about the story of Isa alayhi salam, because in Surah Nisa, verse 157, God says, "And for their saying, indeed we have killed the Messiah Jesus, the son of Mary, the messenger of Allah. And they did not kill him, nor did they crucify him, but another was made to resemble him to them. And indeed those who differ over it are in doubt about it. They have no knowledge of it except the following of assumption, and they did not kill him for certain." And my question is, because from what I understood from your lectures as well, is that God did give death to Jesus. So I was wondering, how should I interpret this verse, and what would be like the chronological order of events in the life of Jesus?
So we have explained this on many occasions, and we have said that this verse actually tells us that Jesus was neither crucified nor was he assassinated or killed, and the matter had been made muddled up. So the words are "walakin shubbiha lahum," which means that no one knew exactly what happened. Yes, there are reports in the Gospel of Barnabas that actually Judas was made to resemble Jesus because he was the one who had notified the authorities that Jesus was hiding somewhere, and because of this traitorship or this deception, he was actually punished for that, and it is said that he he came to resemble Jesus, and the Romans came and crucified Judas, thinking that he was actually Jesus. So, this never happened, and the Quran says that later on, Jesus was given a normal death, and the body of Jesus was just whisked away by the angels and maybe buried somewhere, because there was a chance that they would distort him or mutilate his body. So, in order to preserve the body, also no one else was able to access it, and he was buried somewhere. And wherever he was taken, we don't know about it. All that we know from the Almighty is that he was just taken away by him. Of course, implying that his angels took away and just buried him somewhere.
Okay, if I may ask a follow-up question on that, if Jesus if they thought they killed Jesus, but was actually Judas, wouldn't they see Jesus alive and be like, "Huh, I thought we killed him, but he's just walking around here again. What's going on?"
So it does seem that it was very soon after this alleged event of crucifixion, that this actually took place, that he was taken away and buried, so that the matter should remain muddled up. For example, if he would have been seen alive after his alleged crucifixion, then the whole matter would not have been jumbled up to them. So the Quran says that it was actually a punishment given to them, that they did not even know what had happened. So it just does seem, as a result of this, that it was quite near the crucifixion that he must have been, given death by the Almighty and taken away.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll take 2 more participant questions and then come back to the chat questions. Muhammad Qasim, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum sir.
Alaikum assalam.
सर पिछले महीने हमने आपसे एक सवाल पूछा था एक AI बेस्ड एप्लीकेशन के बारे में जो नमाज की क़िरात को रियल टाइम में ट्रांसलेट करे, तो आपने अपना मौक़िफ़ बयान किया था कि उसको बेहतर होगा कि अगर तरावी की नमाज तक महदूद रखे, नफिल नमाज तक महदूद रखे। पिछले हफ्ते सर हमने वही सवाल गामदी साहब से किया था। तो गामदी साहब ने कहा कि बहुत तारीफ की इस आइडिया की और कहा कि कोई माने नहीं है, ज़रूर बनाइए और ये एक बड़ी खिदमत होगी। तो सर मेरा सवाल आज ये है कि मानकर चलिए हमने ये एप्लीकेशन बना लिया, हम इसको मस्जिद में इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, हम अकेले हैं जो इसको मस्जिद में इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं। शुरुआत में तो ये आम ना हम कोई मेरा मकसद भी नहीं है कि हम इसको आम करें, अगर किसी को पसंद है तो वो अपने लिए इस्तेमाल कर सकता है। तो मानकर चलिए हम इसको मस्जिद में इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, मेरे कान में हेडफोन लगा हुआ है, हम इमाम साहब की क़िरात भी सुन रहे हैं और साथ ही साथ मेरे कान में उसका तर्जुमा भी चल रहा है। मेरे पसंदीदा मुतरजिम गामदी साहब है, तो गामदी साहब का तर्जुमा जवाद अहमद गामदी साहब के आवाज़ में चल रहा है, हम उसको सुन रहे हैं और फिर नमाज हो गई। लोगों ने देखा कि मेरे कान में हेडफोन लगा हुआ है, तो मुमकिन है कि एक रद्द अमल हो या फिर एक शदीद रद्द अमल हो। तो मेरा जो आज सवाल है वो ये है कि अगर ऐसा हुआ, कोई रद्द अमल हुआ, कोई शदीद रद्द अमल हुआ, तो उसका सामना करने की हिकमत अमली क्या होनी चाहिए?
देखिए, आपको तो सादा तौर पे ये कह देना चाहिए कि आपने एक साहिब इल्म आदमी की राय सुनी और उस पर आपने अमल किया। आप उनसे कहें मैं खुद तो आलिम नहीं हूँ, और आलिम ना होने के नाते मैंने साहिब इल्म लोगों से कंसल्ट किया और मुझे एक स्कॉलर की ने ये राय दी कि इसमें कोई हरज नहीं है, तो मैं तो उनकी राय को फॉलो कर रहा हूँ। और दूसरा ये है कि ज़ाहिर अगर आपने जब भी इसको करना है तो आप इसको लोगों के लिए अजनबी वैसे ही ना बनाएं कि लोगों को अचानक पता चले। इसके बारे में आप पहले ही से बता दें, अगर आपने अब तरावी का ज़माना आने वाला है, अगर आप ये करने जा रहे हैं या नमाजों में करने जा रहे हैं, तो अगर आप इसके बारे में लोगों को यानी सरप्राइज़ ना दें, बल्कि बता दें कि हम एक स्कॉलर की राय पे अमल करते हुए ये काम कर रहे हैं, तो उसके बाद गारंटी तो नहीं की जा सकती कि रद्द-ए-अमल फिर भी नहीं होगा, और होने का तो हो सकता है, लेकिन आप अपनी तरफ से मुतमईन हैं कि आपने कोई खुद इज्तिहाद नहीं किया, बल्कि एक साहिब इल्म के इज्तिहाद को अपनाया है आपने।
जी सर, बहुत-बहुत शुक्रिया सर। जज़ाकल्लाह।
Thank you very much. Amna Nabil Khan, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Shehzad bhai. I had a question about namaz. So sometimes we are in a hurry and or let's say at work agar limited time hai, so is it true that sirf farz pad le to that should be enough, or because I want to teach the same thing to my children also कि at least minimum है कि जरा फर्ज नमाज के जरूर पढ़ें और am I understanding this correctly?
Absolutely correctly. The amount that is actually mandatory upon every one of us is the first part. The remaining is all optional. If you have time, you can offer it. Otherwise, it's not an obligation at all. Moreover, you may also need to it also helps you in your work that you can even pray while you're driving the car, maybe even as a driver or sitting beside a driver who's driving, and even walking. So the Quran has given us this option. Rijalam wa rukbana. It says that when the time of the prayer comes and you are riding in a transport or even walking, you can just pray through your gestures as well. I mean, this is how dilute you can make the prayer and how practical it becomes. So not that you should always do that, but the thing is that whenever when things get this tight, that it's not don't have the sufficient time to pray the way we'd normally pray, then we have all these options available. And yes, absolutely correct that the minimum amount of prayer is the first prayer.
This is very helpful because I didn't know कि आप in चलते चलते भी पढ़ सकते हैं क्योंकि कई बार I have these situations where I'm in between patients and really I can't run to my office to say take out my janamaz and say the prayer. So I mean this would be very helpful if I can just say it, while sitting. Like it just takes literally 2 minutes to say a quick prayer. So this is very helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We'll come to chat questions and then get back to the raised hands. Our first chat question is a bit of a long one, so please bear with me. This one asks, the commandments of Surah Nur are aimed for the purity of our own hearts, not the opposite genders. The question which arises is if one interprets lowering gaze, meaning literally not looking at all, so all the whispers will not arise in the heart at the first place. Like our few scholars interpret it, that's when you are covered that one may not feel any bad whispers. If not, then why are the few zinat allowed and few are not? One can feel such thoughts sometimes, even after seeing decent appearance. What exactly does purity of heart mean in this context? We have seen so much confusion amongst people in this matter, and if you can please answer in Urdu.
देखिए, इस सवाल का जवाब तो मैं बहुत दफ़ा दे चुका हूँ, लेकिन मैं कोशिश करता हूँ एक मरतबा फिर आपकी खिदमत में अर्ज़ करूँ कि जो कुरान मजीद से हमें चलना चाहिए। और जब भी हम किसी हुक्म की इल्लत का मतलब है उसकी जो वजह है, कॉज़ है, वो हम तय करें, तो अगर कुरान ने इनको खुद बयान कर दिया है तो हमें उस कॉज़ को समझना चाहिए, वरना ज़ाहिर है कि हम खुद समझने की कोशिश करेंगे इज्तिहाद करके या दीन की मजमूई स्पिरिट को सामने रख के। तो जो सूरह नूर के अहकाम हैं, मर्दों को भी दिए गए हैं, ख़वातीन को भी दिए गए हैं, और दोनों को जब दिए गए हैं तो दोनों में दोहराया गया है कि आपको इसलिए दिए गए हैं कि ताकि आपकी दिल की पाकीज़गी जो है वो मुतासिर ना हो, आपका दिल पाकीज़ा रहे। और वो इसलिए पाकीज़ा रहेगा कि जब अपनी निगाहों को आप पस्त रखेंगे, पस्त का मतलब ये नहीं कि आप ज़मीन में झुका देंगे, उसका मतलब है कि निगाहों में हया रखेंगे। तो वो निगाहों में हया आप तभी रखेंगे कि जब आप आपके सामने जो खातून हैं या खातून अगर मर्द को देख रहे हैं, उनको देखते हुए उनके चेहरे पे निगाह डालेंगे ना, क्योंकि चेहरे पे निगाह डालने को तो कोई नहीं रोका जा रहा। ये कहा जा रहा है कि निगाह डालने में हया पैदा करें, यानी निगाह को मॉडेस्ट होना चाहिए, निगाह के अंदर बेहयाई नहीं होनी चाहिए। उस बेहयाई को अगर आप मलहूज रखते हुए कि आप उसके इर्तिकाब ना करें, अगर आप दूसरे से कॉन्वर्सेशन करेंगे तो यही वजह है कुरान मजीद ने कहा कि इससे आपका दिल पाकीज़ा रहेगा। लेकिन अगर आपने अपनी निगाहों को खुला छोड़ दिया और गुफ्तगू करते वक्त खातून मर्द को और मर्द खातून को इस तरह से देखे कि उसके जो जिनसी आज़ा हैं उनकी तरफ वो स्टेयर करना शुरू कर देगी, अगर नहीं है तो एक निगाहों में बेहयाई सी भी आ सकती है। अगर वो आप उससे परहेज़ नहीं करेंगे तो आपका दिल मैला होगा, और वो दिल का जो मैला होना है दीन हमें असल में उससे रोकना चाहता है। तो मैं तो ये समझता हूँ कि कुरान मजीद ने जहाँ इल्लत बयान कर दी है वहाँ इल्लत को समझना चाहिए। और गज़्ज़े बसर के बारे में जहन में रखिएगा कि कुरान मजीद में इसके नज़ायर और मौजूद हैं। गज़्ज़ुल अस्वात का एक ताबीर आई है, 1-2 जगह पे आई है, और हर जगह यही है कि वो आवाज़ को आपने धीमा करना है। और उस धीमे को अगर आप इंटरप्रेट करेंगे, समझेंगे, तो उससे आपको ये मालूम होगा कि यहाँ मुराद जब कहा जा रहा है कि अपनी निगाहों को नीचा रखें, तो नीचे होने का मुराद ये नहीं है कि निगाहें झुका दें, बल्कि जैसे हम मुहावरतन भी कहते हैं कि झुकी हुई निगाहों से मुराद असल में हया वाली निगाहें हैं। वो निगाहें जिनके अंदर हया पाई जाती है, और वो بے حیائی پر میں کسی چیز کو اسٹیئر نہیں کرتی. تو یہ اصل میں ہے جو مراد ہے, اور یہی وہ وجہ ہے جو کہا گیا کہ اگر آپ کی نگاہوں میں حیا ہوگی تو آپ کا دل پاکیزہ رہے گا. تو یہ خلاصہ ہے ان احکام کا, اور میرے خیال میں یہ بہت ہی برمحل اور برموقع تفصیل ہے ان چیزوں کی. اور یہ جیسے ہی ہم قرآن مجید سے باہر جاتے ہیں اور علت خود طے کرتے ہیں, جیسے کہ ہم نے خود طے کی بہت سارے مواقع پہ, اور یہ کہا کہ خواتین جو ہیں وہ اگر سر ڈھانکے, اگر انہوں نے سر کا کور کیا ہوا ہے, سر کو اگر انہوں نے سنوارا ہوا ہے, تو اس کی وجہ یہ ہے کہ جو مخالف جنس ہے, یہ مرد ہیں, ان کی کوئی ان کو اٹریکشن محسوس نہ ہو. تو قرآن نے تو کہیں بیان ہی نہیں کیا, یہ ہم نے خود اپنے ذہن سے اس کا تصور بنا لیا کہ حجاب لینے کا یا پراپر طریقے سے ڈریس اپ ہونے کا جو قرآن مجید نے ہمیں حکم دیا ہے, اس کی وجہ یہ ہے کہ دوسرا جو جینڈر ہے اس کے اندر کوئی اٹریکشن پیدا نہ ہو. قرآن اس سے سرے سے خالی ہے. تو جس چیز کو قرآن مینشن نہ کرے ہمیں بھی اس کو پرسیو نہیں کرنا چاہیے. قرآن نے اس کے برعکس علت مینشن کر دی ہے کہ آپ کی اپنی پاکیزگی جو ہے وہ ملحوظ رہنی چاہیے, اور دین ہمیں پاکیزہ بنانے کے لیے آیا ہے, اسی وجہ سے حکم بھی دیا ہے.
اس کا فالو اپ کوشچن ہے کہ اگر کسی کے پاس اس طرح کے خیالات آتے ہیں تو کیا اس کا مطلب ہے کہ ان کا دل امپیور ہے؟
ایسا بالکل بھی نہیں ہے. صحابہ کرام نے نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کو یہ کہا کہ ہمارے ذہن میں ایسے ایسے خیالات آتے ہیں کہ ہم بتا دیں تو ہم بتا نہیں سکتے, اس قدر وہ ہیں. تو نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے کہا یہی ایمان کی نشانی ہے. اصل میں یہ تو ورغلانہ ہے. خیال آنے کا مطلب یہ نہیں کہ آپ خود خیال کر رہے ہیں, یہ خیال آپ کے اوپر ڈالے جاتے ہیں. نفس بھی ڈالتا ہے اور شیطان بھی ڈالتا ہے. آپ نے تو ان کو وارڈ آف کرنا ہے, ان کو آپ نے دور کرنا ہے. اور اس کی جو بہترین طریقہ خود نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے ایک دعا کی شکل میں بتایا کہ اللہم انی اعوذ بک من شرور انفسنا, کہ اے خداوند تعالیٰ میں آپ کی پناہ میں آتا ہوں ان شرور کی, ان نفسانی خیالات کی اور خواہشات کی جو مجھے القاء کی جا رہی ہے. تو یہ جو آپ کو خیال آتے ہیں, اس کا یہ مطلب نہیں ہے کہ یہ خیال آپ کو اس لیے کیے جا رہے ہیں کہ آپ ان کو فالو کریں. یہ خیال تو اصل میں آزمائش کے طور پہ ہر انسان کو آتے ہیں. حتیٰ کہ نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم سے بھی لوگوں نے پوچھا تو انہوں نے کہا ہاں مجھے بھی آتے ہیں, اور میرے بھی یعنی مجھے بھی ورغلانے کی شیطان کوشش کرتا ہے. میں نے فرق صرف یہ کیا کہ میں نے اس کو مسلمان کر لیا ہے. مراد یہ ہے کہ میں نے اس کے ساتھ یہ معاملہ کر لیا کہ اب میں اس کے ورغلانے میں نہیں آتا. تو یہ جو آپ کو خیال آتے ہیں, یہ آپ کو اصل میں اٹس ناٹ دیٹ یو آر پروڈیوسنگ دیم, آپ یو آر فیسنگ دیم, آپ ان کا سامنا کر رہے ہیں. آپ نے ان خیالات کی رو میں بہنا نہیں ہے. آپ نے یہ کہنا ہے کہ اللہ تعالیٰ یہ خیال مجھے آ رہا ہے تو آپ مجھے اس سے پناہ دیں. تو یہ مت سمجھے کہ آپ خیال جو ہے یہ آپ کو مطلب آپ سوچ رہے ہیں تو یہ خیال آ رہا ہے. نہیں, یہ خیال آپ پر, یہ آپ کا نفس آپ پہ حملہ کر رہا ہے اور آپ کو پہ ڈال رہا ہے, اور یا شیطان ڈال رہا ہے. آپ نے تو ان کو وارڈ آف کرنا ہے. تو چونکہ وہ آپ کو سجھائی جا رہے ہوتے ہیں نا, یہ whispered to you, تو ایسا لگتا ہے جیسے ہم وہ خود سوچ رہے ہیں. ہم خود نہیں سوچ رہے, بلکہ وہ ہمیں ایک لحاظ سے لیور کیا جا رہا ہے, ایک لحاظ سے اٹریکٹ کیا جا رہا ہے. تو آپ نے اس کو وارڈ آف کرنا ہے, آپ نے اس سے اپنے آپ کو بچانا ہے.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next question asks, within the time frame that we're permitted to pray, can we choose a later adhan time of a different mosque as well? So, for example, you choose a later Fajr adhan time to give more time to tahajjud.
That's fine. Absolutely fine. I mean, tahajjud is one prayer that you have to understand is, I mean, it's not variable. It has a definite time, and that is at the crack of dawn it finishes. So if you look at various mosques and if they offer prayer at different time, it doesn't mean that the Fajr time is started differently. It only means that they are using that latitude or that space between the two, between a prayer which already exists for the Fajr prayer. So the tahajjud prayer ends all over the world, I mean, in your own city at a specified time, regardless of the mosque that you're following. And that is right at the crack of dawn. And that is something that you can just write in your Google or any other browser that you're using. It will tell you that the start of Fajr is here. So from the start of Fajr to sunrise is the Fajr prayer. And you can pray the Fajr prayer in this bracket at any time. But at the start of the Fajr prayer, the Tahajjud time ends. And this is the same for all the mosques in your own city.
Thank you very much. Related to the prayer, somebody's asking, what are the conditions if you want to pray while you're walking or driving?
So you see, they have not been mentioned, and they have been left to our imagination and to the circumstances that we are in. Sometimes we are able to pray in a more, something that is close to the original, and sometimes it is not possible. For example, if you're driving a car, your gestures will be more compromised than the ones that you would be offering while you're sitting in the car. Similarly, while you're walking, obviously, the way that you will be praying would be compromised, and that has been left to you. So facing the Qibla is no longer a condition in that case if you're driving or walking. You just walk in the way, or you drive in the way that you're driving or walking. And the minimum amount of gestures, or let me rephrase it, the maximum amount of gestures that you can offer, while, of course, if you're driving, you have to be concentrating on your driving as well. So that is something that is a matter of life and death as well. So in such situations, every person can, fully understand and fully think that how best he or she can pray while giving due diligence to driving. It's more easy, I guess, while you're walking, because you're mostly walking on the sidewalks. So in that case, again, the gestures would be compromised, and the nature of that compromise is that has been left to your own self. It's not that something has been stipulated.
Thank you very much. Our next question asks, traditionally, we have the understanding that conflict between Ali and Muawiyah was on Qisas al-Uthman. But I think this is not true. This is not the true reflection of the situation. Those who rebelled against Uthman, now forcing people to pledge allegiance for Ali on a religious basis, for example, the divine political authority of Ali and his progeny, this was not a Quranic belief that formed the basis for election of Ali, instead of the Quranic principle of election through mutual consultation. So the struggle of Muawiyah and others appeared to preserve a Quranic principle of election of the political rulers through shura, not merely qisas al-Uthman. What do you think?
I don't have an opinion on this, because you see, in my opinion, historical matters, it's very difficult to form an opinion in spite of having all the data. All that we can say is that both these revered personalities were Sahaba. They knew the Prophet, they knew the Sharia well, and they knew Amruhum Shura Bainahum very well. And they must have tried their best not to compromise this verse. That's all that I can say. What actually happened and what transpired, I can have no certain knowledge about that, but this much I am certain, that both of them were well aware of this principle, and they must have tried their best to adhere to it.
Thank you very much. The next question asks, what's preferable regarding the Sunnah for Jum'ah? Is it for Sunnat before Jum'ah or after the Jum'ah prayer?
So none of these two is actually part of the Jummah prayer or the Friday prayer, neither the four before nor the four after. So the two farz that we pray are the ones that qualify for the Jummah prayer. The later sunnahs are mostly prayed because they are people think that the Jummah is only held in areas in which there is a government representative, and because the government is not taking its due responsibility, so they pray Zohar as a precaution that maybe this Jummah has not been valid because the Imam, which was supposed to be from the ruling party or the government, is not there. So as a precaution, they pray the Zohar prayer. So this is the ijtihad that the Hanafis have done generally. So if someone believes in this ijtihad, then of course they'll have to do those 4 rakats. Otherwise, for all intents and purposes, in my humble opinion, this is not needed at all. Our scholars have taken up responsibilities in lieu of the government, and yes, any collective decision taken on such a level is sort of binding for us, and we should accept it. And hence, we don't need to do. I mean, of course, if we pray 4 more rakats before or after, they're all nafil, they're all optional, but they're not mandatory at all.
Thank you very much. We'll take 2 more chat questions, come back to raised hands, and then go back to chat questions. Is there any reserved grave for Jesus in Rawlat al-Rasul? Is that true or false?
Is there any reserved grave?
In Rawlat al-Rasul.
There is no reserved grave. I mean, Rasuls, they are not, they don't reserve their places. All that we know from the Prophet himself is that he was buried right where he died. And this is something that he had conveyed to his Sahaba, in particular Abu Bakr. So they never moved him. He died in the Hujra, or the room, or the abode of Aisha anha, where he was in the last 6 or 7 days stationed. And he was not moved from that place, and he was just buried right at the place that he died. So that's what we know from what he did, transfer to his companions as a will. But as far as other prophets of God are concerned, we don't have any knowledge of that and what exactly happened and where their graves are. I mean, the rest, all the rest of the graves that have surfaced in the last many years, and they have staked a claim that this is the grave of Noah or maybe Saleh or other prophets. We don't have any definite information, and it all needs to be researched out. And I seriously doubt if we really know the graves of other prophets of God.
Thank you very much. If حروف المقطعات or the names are the names of surah, then how do we take surahs which don't have the muqatta'at, or multiple surahs have the same muqatta'at in the beginning?
Yeah. So you see, if you look at the Quran, it's basically a literary composition. In every literary composition, at times names are given by the author, and at times, if you look at some of the compositions, the names are not given. I mean, it's like a nameless piece of art. So in a very similar way, 29 surahs of the Quran, they have huruf al-muqatta'at, these abbreviated letters, which are God-given names of these surahs. And in spite of being named by God, the Sahaba still gave them more names. So Alif Lam Mim was the name of Surah Baqarah, but the Sahaba did not content themselves on this, and they also named it Al-Baqarah. So this was a very common feature of those times, to have more than one name of a surah. So there was a divine name, Alif Lam Mim, and there was a human given name, which was Al-Baqarah. And this is the case with other surahs as well. And as far as surahs are concerned in which the huruf muqatta'at are similar, like for example, Alif Lam Mim is the name of Baqarah and Al Imran, both surahs, both start with Alif Lam Mim. So they actually signal the fact that they have similar themes in them. And I've explained elsewhere when we're studying the Quran as well, that Al-Baqarah and Al Imran both are counterparts to one another, and they have a similar theme that was discussed at that instance. And that is what we know, that similar huruf al-muqatta'at mean that they have a similarity of theme in them. And the other thing is that this is a very novel way of naming the Quranic surahs. But ever since then, people have not taken up this sort of naming compositions. But it was pretty common in the times of the Prophet, and the Arabs also used to name their compositions by such single words or maybe abbreviated words as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Ammar Rasul, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. Dr. Saab, I wanted to ask if I understand that considering Hazrat Isa as divine or part of a Holy Trinity would be considered a major sin for a monotheistic religion like Islam. But I wanted to ask about the belief of his crucifixion. Is that also considered to be a sin in Islam? And my question is why, when the Quran very clearly states that it was made to appear that way to them. So when the Quran itself is saying that conditions were created where that is what it appeared to them as, then why would God or the Quran reprimand them for that belief? So this is my question, sir.
So the Quran never said it was made to appear. These are not the words of the Quran. The Quran has said that ma qataluhu wa ma salabuhu, neither was he assassinated nor was he crucified. Walakin shubbiha lahum, the matter was made ambiguous to them. The matter was made ambiguous to them. It's not that they thought that they had done something or it was made to appear. All that the Quran says is that the whole matter was jumbled up for them. Lakin shubbiha lahum. These are the Quranic words.
And so, sir, I understand what you're saying. My question still is that a sin for the Christians to believe that he was crucified?
It's not a sin. The thing is that this is what they thought that they had done. Of course, killing someone innocently, and remember, it was not the Christians who had done so. It's not the followers. The Christians, there is a denomination that came into existence much later. It was basically the Jews and the Romans who had done this. So the Romans were in charge, they were in authority at those times, and of course the Jews connived with them. So basically they they tried to crucify him, and it was it was something done for a person, or they inflicted this punishment on a person who did not deserve it. It was like an innocent person being given this punishment. He had not done any sort of crime. He was just implicated so that he would appear to have done some crime. So that is why it is said that it's a murder that has absolutely, or it was a murder thought of a person who had done nothing wrong.
Okay, sir. Very quickly, my follow-up question is, sir, do we know or do we have any idea how it was jumbled up for them? Like when the Quran says that it was.
We don't.
Okay, we don't.
If we had, we would have been in a very clear position. The Quran has just said, "Lakin shubbiha lahum." So what we do understand, the Quran has not commented any further than that. But what is generally understood is what happened is reported in the Gospel of Barnabas, which says that Judas was actually made to resemble Jesus, and they thought that they had actually crucified Jesus, whereas they had crucified Judas. So one version of lakin shubbiha lahum is that probably this is what had happened. So this is like a probable explanation. It's not that the Quran has said that this is what happened. The Quran has stopped here by saying that the matter was made ambiguous upon them. The nature of this ambiguity is something that people have tried to determine in the light of what has been stated in the Gospel of Barnabas.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Muhammad Qasim, please go ahead.
सर मेरा सवाल थोड़ा सा वियर्ड है, लेकिन मेरे सवाल करने का मकसद ये नहीं है कि इसका जो जवाब से जो नतायज है वो अप्लाई हो या ना हो, बल्कि हम समझना ये चाहते हैं कि जो कहा जाता है कि मर्द और औरत बराबर है, और खानदान के इदारे में जो मर्द को एक फौकियत हासिल है वो दरअसल मर्द को नहीं बल्कि एक पोस्ट को हासिल है। तो हम ये समझना चाहते हैं कि मतलब हम ये बराबरी किस हद तक है, अगर मामला उलट कर देखा जाए तो क्या मामला होगा, तो ये हम समझना चाहते हैं। तो सवाल सर दरअसल ये है कि गांधी साहब और हसन भाई का एक 2 मिनट का एक वीडियो रिलीज हुआ चैनल में। तो उसमें ये था कि गांधी साहब ने ये कहा कि अगर औरत सारी की सारी जिम्मेदारी ले लेती है, मतलब जो घर चलाने की जो जिम्मेदारी होती है, हिफाजत की जो जिम्मेदारी होती है, वो औरत अगर ले लेती है और अगर वो इस काबिल भी है और मर्द उसको कबूल कर लेता है, तो ये जो पैराडिम है वो शिफ्ट हो जाएगा, और तो औरत घर के सरबरा हो जाएगी और मर्द उसके मातहत होगा। तो मेरा जो अब सवाल है वो ये है कि सर ये कहा मर्द को, सर हम ये मानते हैं, पहले हम ये डिस्क्लेमर बोलते हैं कि हम ये मानते हैं कि और ये बेहतर समझते हैं कि एक ही शादी हो, ठीक है, एक मर्द एक ही शादी करे तो बेहतर है, लेकिन इस्लाम ने एक से ज्यादा शादी करने को रोका नहीं है। तो मेरा जो सवाल है वो ये है कि औरत को एक से ज्यादा शादी करने को मना किया जाता है क्योंकि एक मतलब वो दो एक से ज्यादा लोग मर्द के सरबराही में नहीं आ सकती पहले तो, और दूसरी चीज ये कि वो एक साथ 2-4 मर्द से बच्चा भी पैदा नहीं कर सकती। तो ये सारे रीजन से रोका जाता है, लेकिन अब साइंटिफिक एडवांसमेंट की वजह से ये चीजें चेंज हो गई है। अगर मानकर चलिए जैसे गांधी साहब ने कहा कि अगर वो औरत इतनी काबिल है और मानकर चलिए कोई बहुत मालदार औरत है, वो मतलब सरबराही एक से ज्यादा मर्दों की ले सकती है और एक से ज्यादा मर्द उसकी सरबराही कबूल भी कर रहे हैं, प्लस साइंस की टेक्नोलॉजी में आज जो ओवम रिलीज होता है, एक ही मेंस्ट्रुअल साइकिल में मल्टीपल ओवम भी रिलीज हो जाते हैं, हो सकते हैं बाय यू नो हार्मोन इंजेक्शन, कभी कभी तो 50 के आसपास भी
आप अपना सवाल करेंगे तो सब बातें वाज़ेह हैं। आपका सवाल क्या है?
हाँ तो सर मेरा सवाल ये है कि सर सरोगेसी और सैमल्टेनियस मल्टीपल सरोगेसी, ये सारी पॉसिबिलिटीज को कंबाइन करने के बाद और डीएनए पैटर्निटी टेस्ट को भी कंबाइन करने के बाद क्या एक औरत को ये गुंजाइश हो सकती है कि वो एक से ज्यादा शादी कर ले?
बिल्कुल हो सकती है। देखिए, अगर आपने ये सारा पैराडाइम को उलट कर दिया है तो जो हुकूक सरबराह को हासिल हैं वो सरबराह को हासिल रहेंगे, क्योंकि जैसे कि अभी बयान किया कि असल चीज़ मर्द औरत नहीं है बल्कि सरबराही की वो पोजीशन है। अगर इल्लत तब्दील हो जाती है और सरबराही खातून को हासिल हो जाती है तो वो इस्तेकाक उसको भी हासिल हो जाएगा शादी एक से ज़्यादा करने का, क्योंकि अब सरबराह वो है। अब जो वो चारों अगर एक से ज़्यादा मर्द हैं जो चारों ही इस तरह के हैं कि वो अपनी नेचर में सबसर्विएंट है और वो खातून सबके लिए कमा रही है, तो फिर वो जाहिर है कि उनकी सरबराह वो होगी। اور سروگسی اس کو نہیں کہیں گے. سروگسی بالکل اور چیز ہے. دیکھیں سروگسی کا تو یہ مطلب ہوتا ہے کہ ڈونر ہوتی ہے کوئی خاتون, یعنی وہ یا ریسیپینٹ, یعنی اس کو ریسیپٹیبل ہم کہتے ہیں اس کو, کہ جہاں پہ فیٹس کو رکھا جاتا ہے, اور یا وہ ڈونر ہوتی ہے. تو سروگسی کے الفاظ کو میرے خیال نہ استعمال کریں. زیادہ بہتر ہے کہ اگر آپ کا سوال یہ ہے کہ اگر اتنی زیادہ تبدیلی آ جائے کہ خاتون جو ہے وہ سربراہی, وہ اگر پورے کے پورے خاندان کو کے بارے میں یہ کہہ دے کہ بھئی کلیم کرے کہ میں ان کو سپورٹ کروں گی اور میں اب سربراہ ہوں, اور مرد جو ہے اس سربراہی کو قبول کر لے, تو چاہے وہ ایک ہوں چاہے وہ چار ہوں, سربراہی کو وہ قبول کریں گے, اور خاتون کے پہ وہی پھر قدغن عائد ہوگی کہ وہ سب کے لیے پرووائڈ کرے گی, ایک سے زیادہ کا شوہر ہے, اور پھر وہی عدل کی شرط بھی رہے گی کہ سارے معاملات کو کرنا پڑے گا. مطلب یہ ہم تھیوریٹیکلی کہہ رہے ہیں, یہ عملاً ہو یا نہ ہو یہ ایک الگ بات ہے. تھیوریٹیکلی یہ بات درست ہے, لیکن اگر آپ اس کو عمل کرنے پہ آئیں گے تو ممکن ہے کہ ہزار دقتیں سامنے آئیں. لیکن اس وقت ہم پریکٹیکل بات نہیں کر رہے. اگر ہم صرف تھیوریٹیکل بات کریں تو یہ بات یہاں تک پہنچ جائے گی.
سر صرف ایک بات بولنا چاہیں گے, یہ جو سروگیسی کا ٹرم ہم نے یوز کیا وہ دراصل اس لیے کہ سائملٹینیس ملٹیپل سروگیسی سے عورت ایک ساتھ ایک سے زیادہ مرد کے لیے بچے پیدا کر سکتی ہے. تو مطلب وہ کانسیپٹ کو, وہ پاسبلٹی کو ظاہر کرنا تھا بس سر.
نہیں دیکھیں
جزاک اللہ
ملٹیپل
سر. آپ
سروگیسی
جی
نہیں, دیکھیے اس کے اندر نسب کو پرزرو کرنے کے لیے یہ ضروری ہے نا کہ پتہ چلے کہ وہ کس کا بچہ ہے. تو وہاں ہم سروگیسی کو الاؤ نہیں کریں گے. اگر وہ کسی ایک سے حاملہ ہو گئی ہے تو وہ ڈیفینیٹلی پہلے معلوم کرنا پڑے گا, اور اس کے ڈی این اے کے ذریعے سے, ڈی این اے ٹیسٹ سے معلوم ہو جاتا ہے کہ باپ کون ہے. ہاں وہاں اس کیس میں پھر ملٹیپل سروگیسی کا تو مطلب پھر یہ ہے کہ ایک بچے کے کئی باپ ہیں, یا ان کے بارے میں اشتباہ ہے کہ باپ کون ہے. تو باپ اور ماں کا
نہیں
اشتباہ نہیں
نہیں
ہونا چاہیے.
نہیں, میرے کہنے کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ لیٹس سے کہ ایک مرد سے ایک بچہ اسی عورت کا پیدا ہو رہا ہے کسی اور کے کوکھ میں, اور اسی وقت دوسرے مرد سے اور ایک بچہ پیدا ہو رہا ہے اور کسی اور کے کوکھ میں, فورتھ پرسن کے کوکھ میں. سو دس از واٹ آئی مین.
نہیں میں آپ کی بات نہیں سمجھا, دوبارہ ایکسپلین کریں.
میرے کہنے کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ لیٹس سے کہ وہ عورت, ہم تھیوریٹیکلی ہی بات کر رہے ہیں, وہ عورت جو ایک سے زیادہ مرد کی سربراہی اختیار کی ہے, اب لیٹس سے کہ وہ اس کا ایک مرد کے ساتھ بچہ ہو رہا ہے, اس کا ہی ہو رہا ہے, ڈی این اے اسی کا ہے, اووم اسی کا ہے, لیکن وہ جو امپلانٹ ہے وہ امپلانٹ کسی اور کے یوٹرس میں ہے. تو یہ سروگیسی سے وہ بچہ پیدا کر رہی ہے, جو
اس میں
غامدی
تو
صاحب
کوئی حرج
صحیح بھی
نہیں ہے.
کہتے ہیں.
اس میں تو کوئی حرج نہیں, کیونکہ اصل میں وہاں سروگیسی کا تو یہ مطلب ہے کہ ماں اور باپ متعین ہیں, مشخص ہیں. سروگیسی تو تیسری ماں ہے, جو تیسری کہنا چاہیے, یہ تھرڈ پیرنٹ ہے, جس کے اندر وہ ریسیپٹیبل کے طور پہ وہ ایک اس کو رکھا جا رہا ہے. تو وہ تو اس میں تو کوئی مسئلہ نہیں ہے. وہ تو دیکھیں سروگیسی کا پرنسپل تو الگ سے ویسے ہی ٹھیک ہے کہ آپ ایک خاتون جو ہے اس کے رحم کے اندر ایک فرٹیلائزڈ ایگ کو آپ رکھ سکتے ہیں, اور وہ اس کو ماں کے طور پہ ہم ٹریٹ کریں گے, اور وہ جیسے نرشمنٹ دیتی ہے تو وہ دیتی رہے گی. تو اس کو آپ, میں اس لیے کہہ رہا ہوں کہ سروگیسی سے اس 4 شادیوں کا یا مرد کی سربراہی کا مسئلہ لنک نہیں ہے. یعنی وہ تو ان اینی کیس ٹھیک ہے الگ سے. یہاں تو ہم یہ دیکھ رہے ہیں کہ اگر جیسے آپ نے کہا کہ علت اتنی تبدیل ہو جائے کہ جو سربراہ مرد تھے اگر وہ تمام کے تمام حقوق خاتون کو حاصل ہو جائیں, تو آپ پوچھ رہے ہیں نا پھر کیا چیز ہے جو مانے رہ جاتی ہے. تو میں نے یہ عرض کیا کہ پھر کچھ مانے نہیں رہتا. وہ مکمل طور پہ پھر ایسے ہی جو ہم نے حقوق سربراہ کے طور پہ مرد کو دیے ہیں وہی پھر بیوی کو حاصل ہو جائیں گے.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem.
سر
I'm
ایک
going to
منٹ
have to
میم.
cut you off right here, Muhammad Qasim. We're running short on time. I'm very sorry. Please raise your hand if you have a follow-up question. If we have remaining time, then you may ask your follow-up. Related to that question, does this mean that polyandry is allowed in Islam?
It's not. I mean, polyandry is something else. I mean, to have, you regard the husband to be the head of the family, and you still have, a wife has multiple husbands. So that is not what is allowed. So polyandry, if it is allowed, it is only in the form that you have when the woman is the head of the state, head of the family, and then she has all the rights as the head of the family. In polyandry, this is not the case. In polyandry, what happens is that you still consider the husband to be the head of the family, and in spite of that, you say that, well, a woman can have multiple husbands.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Dr. Saleem. I think there might be some confusion going on with the participants regarding this hypothetical question versus the actual reality of what Islam is saying. So we might be getting more questions regarding this topic. But for now, I just want to state that we have a bunch of questions and we have people that have posted much more than one question. So we'll be taking one question and priority will be given to participants who have not asked their questions yet. So we'll take one more raised hand question and then we'll come back to chat questions with priority for people who have not asked their questions yet. Akram Bhatti, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam.
So lately, we found out that surahs are in pairs. But then, like we just mentioned earlier, that certain surahs that like Alif Lam Mim, Alif Lam Ra, they are 6 and 5. So, like you told us earlier, they have similar subject. All the 5-6 surahs in Alif Lam Ra and all Alif Lam Mim and Alif Lam Ra, they all have similar subject. If you pay attention to it,
Correct. They have a similar theme. And that similarity, of course, is something that needs to be divulged and understood. Otherwise, similarity in name in general applies similarity of theme, or there may be some other type of similarity, but there is some form of similarity. It could be different for different surahs.
okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Moving on to chat questions. Is Duha an actual prayer, the Sunnah prayer before Dhuhr, and what is the reward for it?
This is just an optional prayer, the Salatul Zuha. It's not even stipulated by the Prophet himself. It is said that he once prayed 8 rakats at the conquest of Mecca at the Zuha time, and people then started to think that this is like a constant prayer. So it's basically a prayer that he offered once, probably.
Thank you very much. Our next question asks, why does Quran not mention Dajjal and practical elements of Salah? We have to derive all the knowledge of those two from a hadith alone. Shouldn't hadith then be given equal importance of the Quran? Because if it didn't exist, we would be lacking in certain knowledge.
So this shows actually the questioner is not very clear about the fact that there is a clear distinction between Sunnah and Hadith. So the prayer and many other things which relate to the practical aspects of life are concerned, they don't relate to Hadith. Hadith is just a record. So Sunnah is the correct word, the established practice of Abraham and later on ratified by Prophet Muhammad himself. So the source of religion basically is the Quran on the one hand and the Sunnah on the other hand, which means that the two are transmitted through Tawatur and Ijma and they give certitude. Hadith is just a record, or it's a historical repository, I would say, of the knowledge of the Prophet, and that's independent of the Sunnah. So the practical aspect of religion has been transmitted through the Sunnah, not through the Hadith. Hadith is just recording that.
Thank you very much. The next question asks, how do you differentiate the difference between genuine critical questions and whispers of shaitan? And this is coming from the perspective that most of the time whenever we have questions about traditional beliefs in religion, that it's always considered whispers of shaitan.
That is, again, you see the confusion that has been caused is that if you have questions, then people tell you that these are whispers of Satan. Because you have been indoctrinated by this concept, so every time you have those questions, you think that these are whispers of Satan. And again, I'm afraid, and it's very unfortunate, that people, when they teach religion and people have questions, so instead of answering those questions or encouraging those questions, what they say is that, well, these are whispers of Satan. Absolutely incorrect. I mean, a question is a genuine question that arises in your mind, and that can always be, you can have an answer to it, and you could be satisfied by the answer. Whispers, of course, are something that come to you, and they are not in the form of questions. They are in the form of strange ideas. They could be all sorts of things that they come to your mind. But the thing is that as soon as you evaluate them, then you clearly come to know whether these are just stray thoughts that have come to your mind, or maybe it's a genuine question. So it's just a question of rehearsing them yourselves, and you'll get to know them. Evil thoughts or whispers, they always are in their negative format. You'll never have a question, a positive question, even if it is of a critical nature. It's not something that will be in any way disparaging or would bear the label of being something evil per se. So you'll get to know yourself by a little rehearsal, by a little practice, that these are thoughts that you have, and there are other things that come to your mind, because these other things that come to mind are normally in the form of I would say unjustified statements. I mean, they're not really true, or at times they are absolutely I would say I mean, you just cannot imagine that you could have said these things. So you get to know whether I'm thinking these things or whether I'm being suggested these things.
Right. So for this whole paradigm of not facing those thoughts, is that something that's mentioned in the Quran? So that you'll have those thoughts, but you have to face them.
Yes, the Quran has mentioned this very explicitly in Surah An-Nas, the very last surah. It says that the way that Satan tries to deceive you is allazi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas, that he tries to whisper suggestions in the hearts of people. And at another instance in the Quran, in Surah Yusuf, when Prophet Joseph he was lured by the lady of Egypt. He said, "Wama ubarri'u nafsi, inna nafsa la ammaratum bisu," which means that I do not absolve my nafs, my whispers, from my own self, and these whispers are, I mean, our own nafs does make these whispers, or does whispers to us to do bad things. So we have the source as Satan on the one hand, and our own nafs and our own inner self giving us those bad suggestions. So both are mentioned in the Quran.
Thank you very much. The next question, it's a series of questions related to food. They're very short. So is wasting food makruh or a sin? And can you give haram food to non-Muslims or to pets if you buy it accidentally? And do you get rewarded when you stop yourself from doing sin and makruh?
Remember, the word makruh is something that's never ever used by the Prophet. So these are, I would say, designations, or these are categorizations which have been done by the jurists themselves. So something which is not liked is called makruh. There's no such term used by the Prophet. The Prophet either regards something to be allowed or disallowed. So this is what we can say explicitly. Whatever is makruh or whatever is not makruh is something which our jurists have come up with in another category, which means that it is disliked. It's not actually a sin, it's some sort of a dislike. So I think, again, instead of going into whether it's a explicit sin or it's something that is a makruh thing, we should always think about the fact that how grave is something that we're doing. For example, wasting food. Why should we do that at all? I mean, instead of thinking the nature of the sin that it is classified as, the thing is that whatever the classification, why should we do that? And unless we are compelled, unless we have no other option, unless there is something that we can't help, we should not waste food. I mean, this is how we should look at things. Not in the negative way that if we do this, then this is the repercussion, but in a positive way, that why at all should we do that? And there should be a mighty good reason if we are forced to waste food, as might be the case.
Thank
And
you.
what was
It was if you can give haram food to non-Muslims or to pets.
For pets, for sure, yes, of course, you can give them pork. For non-Muslims, I mean, it all depends. There could be this situation. I mean, personally, I think that this is something that should be avoided for non-Muslims as well, because something which is a moral sin, something which is inherently wrong, is inherently wrong for everyone. So I would suggest that we should not use it ourselves. That is, of course, understood, and not even give to other people. But yes, there could be someone who argues that, well, in any case, they're going to consume that, and so if we give it away instead of wasting it, at least I mean, maybe we are helping someone out. So that a case could be made out of that. But I personally am not very comfortable with that, because I think that when something is morally incorrect, we should neither indulge in that thing ourselves nor become a source of making other people indulge in it.
Thank you very much. For the remainder of the raised hand participants, please keep your questions incredibly concise. Salman Akram, please go ahead. Salman Akram, please go ahead.
डॉक्टर साहब, आपसे जो है वो आपका लेक्चर जो है क्रिटिकल स्टडी ऑफ हदीस लिटरेचर, वो मैं फॉलो कर रहा था, और उसमें मवज़तैन के बारे में आपने एक राय दी, एक लास्ट में एक रवायत थी कि उसमें जो वो कुल के अल्फाज थे, उससे थोड़ा सा हमें क्लू मिल जाता है
کہ حضرت عبداللہ بن مسعود نے کیا بات کی ہوگی اور جس کو کس طرح سے جو ہے وہ ڈسٹورٹ ہوگی. اس کے بعد جو ہے وہ میں استاد غامدی صاحب کو دیکھ رہا تھا تو انہوں نے کہا کہ چونکہ جو ہے وہ قرآن اپنے مضمون کے لحاظ سے سورہ اخلاص پر ختم ہو جاتا ہے تو غالباً حضرت عبداللہ بن مسعود نے یہ بات کی تھی کہ قرآن جو ہے وہ اصل تو ختم ہو چکا ہے سورہ اخلاص پہ، یہ بعد میں جو 2 صورتیں ہیں یہ اٹیچ جو ہے وہ کر دی گئی ہیں اس کے ساتھ. تو کیا ان استاد غامدی کے بھی پیش نظر یہی روایت تھی یا وہ جسٹ اس کو اوور آل نظم قرآن سے ایکسپلین کر رہے تھے؟ اور تھوڑا سا اس پہ تھوڑا آپ ایکسپلین کر دیں کہ کس طریقے سے وہاں پہ مضمون جو ہے وہ ختم ہوتا ہے اور کس طرح سے یہ 2 صورتیں ایک علیحدہ حیثیت میں. شکریہ.
دیکھیں وہ تو انہوں نے قیاس کیا ہے اور وہ قیاس اس سے کیا ہے کہ روایت کو انہوں نے ایکسپلین کرنے کی کوشش کی ہے قطع نظر اس کے کہ وہ صحتاً ٹھیک ہے یا نہیں ٹھیک ہے. وہ انہوں نے روایت کے الفاظ پر انہوں نے کوئی رائے نہیں دی بلکہ انہوں نے کہا کہ غالباً ایسا ہو سکتا ہے کہ زیادہ سے زیادہ اگر ہم یہ مان لیں کہ وہ ان 2 صورتوں کو قرآن کا حصہ نہیں مان رہے تھے تو اس کی وجہ یہ ہوگی کہ قرآن اپنے مضمون کے لحاظ سے ان سے پہلے ہی ختم ہو جاتا ہے. اور اس کا مطلب جو ہے وہ انہوں نے خود ایکسپلین کیا ہوا ہے سورہ اگر آپ ان کا جو قرآن کا ترجمہ پڑھیں گے ان کی تفسیر پڑھیں گے البیان اس میں قرآن کا جو آخری گروپ یا آخری چیپٹر ہے جو سورہ ملک سے لے کے سورہ ناس تک ہے اس میں انہوں نے بتایا کہ کس طرح قرآن مجید اصل میں سورہ اخلاص پہ ختم ہو جاتا ہے اور یہ جو آخری 2 صورتیں ہیں یہ اس خزانہ توحید کے لیے ایک لحاظ سے سینٹینلز ہیں یا ان کے لیے ان کو گارڈ کری. اور یہ تنہا ان کی رائے نہیں ہے بلکہ اس سے پہلے استاد امیر الدین فراہی اور استاد امین حسن اصلاحی دونوں کی رائے ہے جن کو انہوں نے بیان کی ہے. تاہم میرا خیال ہے کہ یہ انہوں نے صرف اس لیے کہ الفاظ کہ اگر آپ متن پہ غور نہ کریں تو آپ ایک توجیہ کر سکتے ہیں تو انہوں نے اس کی ایک توجیہ کی ہے اور میرا خیال ہے کہ اگر وہ الفاظ پہ غور کرتے تو شاید اس توجیہ کی ضرورت نہ پڑتی. میں تو جس نتیجے پہ پہنچا ہوں وہ یہ ہے کہ وہ بات بالکل اور تھی. حضرت عبداللہ بن مسعود ہرگز سورہ والناس کو اور سورہ فلق کو قرآن کا حصہ ایسا نہیں تھا کہ اس کو نہیں مانتے تھے بلکہ وہ مانتے تھے لیکن ان کی بات کو سمجھنے میں دقت ہوئی ہے. تو میری انڈرسٹینڈنگ مختلف ہے ان سے. وہ تو صرف یہ کہہ رہے ہیں کہ اگر آپ یہ مان بھی لیں کہ وہ نہیں مانتے تھے تو غالباً وہ یہ کہہ رہے ہوں گے. تو وہ ان کا چونکہ طریقہ یہ ہے کہ وہ روایت کی ہر صورت میں توجیہ کرنے کی کوشش کرتے ہیں اس وجہ سے ان کو شاید یہ کرنا پڑا. ہاں میرا خیال ہے یہ تکلف کرنے کی ضرورت نہیں ہے اور وہ واضح ہو جاتا ہے. عبداللہ بن مسعود کی بات تو سرے سے یہ تھی ہی نہیں, وہ تو اس کو حصہ مان رہے تھے. فرق صرف یہ تھا کہ سننے والوں نے غالباً یہ سمجھا کہ یہ کل ہے یہ قرآن کا حصہ ہے یا یہ جبریل نے ان کو کہا ہے کہ آپ کل کو ایک کمانڈمنٹ کے طور پہ سمجھیں اور اعوذ برب الناس سے سورہ شروع کریں.
شکریہ بہت بہت. تھینک یو.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Noshaba, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, my question is regarding what's the difference between intention, wish, and waswasa? Because I become always confused. Like sometimes I have a wish to, for example, say something bad to other person, but I don't do it because Islam said don't do it. So, but
I mean, it's just a question of, as I said, just evaluate something. Intention is something when you intend something, when you really make up your mind. Wish is something when you desire something, you have a desire, you think that something should happen. And waswasa or whisper is something when some alien thought comes into you, and normally those thoughts are negative in nature. They are either disparaging in nature or they have leaning towards lust or evil. So these could be called whispers. Otherwise, intention is something in which you make up your mind, you're determined to do something. Similarly, wish is something that you desire that something should happen. So it's just a question of evaluating all these 3 separately.
so the thing come in the mind instantly while talking to other person, that we can count as a wish then?
I mean, you just cannot classify in this way. It's not that the thing that comes to your mind is always a wish. It could be your intention as well, because of course you conceive an idea and then the next step is that you either reject it or you make up your mind that I'm going to follow it. So you see, this is something that you have to evaluate yourself. It's not a rule of thumb. It's not a black and white thing that can be said. What can be said is that when you create an idea, it could be something of a positive in nature. I mean, positivity. Whenever you have a positive idea, it can never be a waswasa. It can never be a whisper, because whisper is always regarding to do something which is against morality. So one thing that can be clear is that you can not classify this to be a waswasa. Yes, you can have an evil desire as well. So maybe once you accept an evil waswasa or waswasa which is evil per se, which would mean that now that waswasa is converted into your desire because now you have accepted it. So waswasa is just like a bait thrown at you, and then you accept that bait, and then you start thinking on those lines. So that is how you should clarify, or I would say classify. And intention is something in which you conceive an idea in your mind and you say, okay, yes, I'm going to do this. I make up my mind, I'll follow this, or I'll go about doing this. So this is how you can classify these three things separately.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Jawad Ishrat, please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
जी सॉरी आपके पास शायद टाइम बहुत कम रह गया है। एक सवाल था हमारे पास लेकिन वो थोड़ा सा लॉन्ग हो जाएगा, उसका आंसर भी शायद आपको देने में थोड़ा टाइम लगे, लेकिन आई एम रियली अप्रिशिएट कि आप बहुत अच्छे तरीके से तमाम चीज़ों की वजाहत कर देते हैं। लेकिन एक चीज़ ये है कि तलाक के मौजू पर जो बात हुई थी, गांधी साहब ने कहा था कि 1 साल के बाद, यानी अगर 3 महीने बाद एक तलाक दी जाए तो फिर इस तरीके से तलाक देने के बाद औरत और मर्द दोबारा निकाह नहीं कर सकते। लेकिन हमारी अंडरस्टैंडिंग कुरान से ये नजर आती है कि ये
3 साल कह रहे हैं या 3 मरतबा आप कह रहे हैं? गालिबन 3 मरतबा कह रहे हैं आप?
जी 3 मरतबा दी जाए 1 साल में।
नहीं, 1 साल का तो बताओ।
जी 1 साल के बाद
निकाह में।
जी रिश्ता निकाह में जिन्हें 3 मंथ्स के बाद वो दे दी जाए तो 3 मंथ्स करके अगर तलाक देंगे तो ऑलमोस्ट 8-9 महीने का अर्सा लग जाता है।
नहीं ऐसा तो कभी भी उन्होंने कहा कि 3 महीने का तो लिंक ही नहीं है ऐसे कोई।
नहीं चले 4 मंथ्स एक तौर की बात होगी, व्हाटएवर, मतलब ये चले हम सॉरी एक्सप्लेन नहीं कर सके सही तौर से कि 1 पीरियड के बाद तलाक दे दी जाए।
आप अपना सवाल कर लीजिए ना, आपके जहन में जो सवाल है।
हम अपना सवाल जी हम अपना सवाल करें। तो ये सवाल ये है कि हमारा ख्याल ये था कि किसी भी तरीके से तलाक दे दी जाए, यानी पूरी कुरान के मुताबिक तलाक दे दी गई, तरीके से दे दी गई, दस्तूर के मुताबिक दे दी गई, उसके बाद भी अगर दोनों मर्द और औरत निकाह करना चाहें तो वो कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि कुरान की जो आयत है आप उसमें खुद ही आप उसकी वजाहत कर देंगे सूरह बकरा में कि अगर वो अपने शोहरों से निकाह करना चाहें तो उनके राह में आप रुकावट ना करें। तो अगर किसी भी तरीके से तलाक दे दी जाए लेकिन अगर वो दोबारा निकाह करना चाहें तो वो कर सकते हैं, ये हमारी अंडरस्टैंडिंग थी। लेकिन गांधी साहब ने ये कहा था एक जगह पर कि अगर दस्तूर के मुताबिक यानी कुरान के मुताबिक तलाक दी गई हो, प्रॉपर तरीके से तलाक दी गई हो, तो फिर आपस में निकाह नहीं कर सकते। लेकिन हमारी अंडरस्टैंडिंग
मेरे ख्याल आप उनकी बात नहीं सही समझे, और आप अगर उनकी बात को समझना चाहें ना तो सूरह बकरा की जहां उन्होंने तफसीर की है, या उनकी किताब जो मीज़ान है जहां तलाक का मौजू ज़ेर बहस आया है, वहां आप उसको पढ़ें। कुरान मजीद ये कहता है कि अत्तलाक मर्रतान, इस तरह से जो तलाक दी जाती है कि जिसमें आप तलाक दें और इद्दत में रुजू कर लें, ये 2 दफ़ा दी जा सकती है। तीसरी मरतबा अगर आप ये देंगे तो फिर कुरान ये कहता है कि फिर आप दोबारा शादी नहीं कर सकते जब तक कि जिसको आपने तलाक दी है वो किसी और से शादी करे, और फिर नेचुरली अरिजन सर्कमस्टांसेस में उसको तलाक हो, फिर वो पहले शोहर के लिए हलाल होगी। ये तो कुरान मजीद अपने अल्फाज में कहता है। वो जो आप कह रहे हैं कि अगर 2 मियाँ बीवी शादी करना चाहें तो आपस में आप रुकावट नहीं बनेंगे, वो एक अमूमी प्रिंसिपल है जो अलग से बयान हो गया है। और वो ये है कि अगर एक खातून को तलाक हो गई है तो आपकी कोई गैरत की वजह से आपको रोकना नहीं चाहिए किसी भी लिहाज से वो किसी और से शादी कर ले, यानी वहां तो वो चीज ज़ेर बहस है। और वो नीचे सूरह बकरा में अगर आप जो आयत 228 जहां से शुरू होता है तलाक का पूरा कजिया, वहां से पढ़ना शुरू करेंगे तो वाज़ेह हो जाएगा। वो जो बात कह रहे हैं वो तो कुरान मजीद के अंदर बयान हो गई है कि वो तलाक जिसके अंदर तलाक देने के बाद आप रुजू कर लें, अत्तलाक मर्रतान, ये 2 दफा दी जा सकती है। फ़इन तल्लक़हा, अगर आप तीसरी मरतबा आप तलाक देंगे तो फिर पूरा उसका प्रोसीजर बयान हुआ है। तो मैं आपको एडवाइस करूंगा, मेरे पास टाइम कम है, आप ये जो आयात हैं इनको उनकी तफसीर के तहत पढ़ लीजिए, और या जहां उनकी किताब मीज़ान में तलाक का मौजू ज़ेर बहस लेके आए, वहां उन्होंने एक्सप्लेन किया है जो उन्होंने क्या कहा है। मर्रतान का मतलब है 2 मरतबा।
जी एग्जैक्टली, ठीक है। चलिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, कोई डाउट होगा तो फिर इंशाल्लाह डिस्कस कर लेंगे।
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Please go ahead.
Yes, my question is, how do we reach a certain level that we are able to have enough knowledge to answer these questions for ourselves, and how do we start?
Well, this is a question of placing a certain target before yourselves in life. And there are 2 ways of going about mastering any discipline. One, that you think that you are going to be a teacher or maybe an advanced student of a particular subject. For that, of course, there is a cutout syllabus that can be prescribed, for any subject, and as a matter of fact, for religion as well. And then there is another step in which you say that, well, I would like to become a scholar or researcher of religion. So in that case, of course, the nature of study would be even more advanced, and it will be very thorough. So it all depends the background that you have, where exactly you're going to start from. For example, if you're already aware of the Arabic language, then that whole period of learning a language will no longer be required. But to become a scholar and researcher that bases his or her opinions on the original sources, for that you must have a very good understanding of the Arabic language, in fact, classical Arabic. However, if that is not the case and you'd like to just become a presenter or a teacher in which you are going to present the opinions of various authorities by understanding them and then just digesting them and presenting them to your students, then for that, of course, that's not an advanced level course or syllabus that you might need. All that you need to do is to master the subject that you're going to teach. So it all depends what your intention and what your target is.
Thank you very much.
Ammar Rasul, please go ahead.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sahab.
Magnus Salam.
Dr. Sahab, I wanted to ask about Surah 9, verse 31. It says, they've taken their priests and saints as lords besides God and the Messiah, son of Mary. Anyway, the verse carries on. And so the question is that there was this story that I heard a scholar say where a Christian during the time of the Prophet had become a Muslim. And when this verse came out, he approached the Prophet and said that the Quran is not factual at this point because the Christians by and large the Christians or the Jews by and large do not consider the saints to be gods. So then why is the Quran claiming that?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last part. The Quran is what?
The Quran is saying in this verse that they take their saints as deities besides God.
Yes, correct. So
my question is that there was this story that I heard from a scholar that a Christian in the times of the Prophet had become a Muslim, but when this verse came out, he had approached the Prophet and he had said that this verse is not accurate depiction of the Christian or the Judaism faith. Because
that's not correct, actually. I mean, this is just a story that has come out, and the Quran itself is explained elsewhere that what exactly does this mean when you say that they have made Ruhban and their priests to be God? It means that they have given them the authority to make what is allowed to be disallowed and what is disallowed to be allowed. So this is an authority which only God has. I mean, only God can tell you what is haram and what is halal. But if your own scholars are going to do that or have that authority invested in them, then they are virtually equating themselves to that divine authority. So that is what is implied here.
So, but that sin we Muslims are also indulging in day in and day out constantly, sir.
Of course we are. So that is again something that we should not do, because this is how when you are equating the authority of God with some other person, then that is what we call a polytheistic attitude. And at times we might not realize it, and at times we do realize it.
Thank you very much.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Amna Nabil Khan, please go ahead.
So this is in follow-up to food, actually. So basically, I wanted to find out this Zabia. So Shehzad bhai, if you could just kind of give us an understanding. I mean, we live in America and we don't get halal food all the time. And again, in reference to what can I teach my children who are in school and college and they may not have access to, I mean, we try our best. We do it at home for sure. But outside, what can we do? I mean, is it true that we can say the kalma and it becomes acceptable on food like chicken? And so not talking about haram, it's all about the regular other food.
Of course. So you see, in order to understand this, we will have to go a little deeper so that maybe you can understand the philosophy of why it takes so much pain. And of course, it's something that you need to reason out with your children, especially if they are school and college going, because unless you make them understand the reason and wisdom of something, merely by saying that it is allowed or not allowed is not going to make sense to them. So you see, first of all, let me start off by saying that, of course, by pronouncing Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim at a halal, I mean, the type of food like chicken does not make it halal, because the whole exercise has a different scenario to it. Let me try to explain it. And that, you see, the Quran says that we don't have the authority to take the life of an animal. I mean, we have absolutely no authority to take the life of a human being. So, I mean, that's out of question. The Quran says even the life of an animal is something that you cannot in any way take. The only way in which you can take the life of an animal is that you seek God's permission. And the way you seek that permission is that you say, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, which means that God, I am using the authority that you have invested in me to slaughter this animal at the time of slaughtering it by pronouncing your name, that now I'm authorized to take the life of this animal. Otherwise, I was not even authorized to kill this animal. So basically, it is at the time of slaughter that we pronounce God's name that makes that meat halal, or the zabiha, the way we call it. Because now I'm pronouncing God's name and seeking His permission, that I could not have taken the life of the animal because it is so sacred. So basically, what is being said is that life itself is so sacred that even an animal's life cannot be in any way tampered with, let alone a human life. I mean, a human life cannot be tampered with in any case, but even an animal's life cannot be tampered with in any way unless God's permission is not granted. So that permission is granted by saying Bismillah, Allahu Akbar at the time of slaughter, when the animal is being slaughtered, not when you're eating it, but when you're slaughtering it, because that was the time you were trying to take the animal's life. So this is the whole philosophy of Zabiha, that animal life is something that should not be in any way considered absolutely allowed, or you can just take it at your own will, unless you seek God's permission, so that life is given sanctity, and more than that, human life is also given that sanctity. So I think if you are able to understand this, and I do think that it does make sense, I think that you'll be able to explain this to your children as well, that basically animals, they also have this protection of life from God. And this protection is only taken away from them if we seek God's name, if we pronounce God's name at the time of slaughter.
So why is this protection just for certain animals and not for seafood? I mean, am I correct in saying that we can eat seafood and seafood is or is that the same formula there?
All carnivorous animals, or animals which eat their prey by actually tearing it apart, either through their nails or their claws or through their teeth, they are prohibited, whether they are land animals or sea animals.
Okay. So that
sharks,
includes
for example,
sharks and yeah.
Yes, of course. So they are carnivorous and they tear apart their prey. And then again, the philosophy has to come into play, because when you explain something to your adult children, then you have to tell them why. So you see, the thing is that we know from practice that whatever we eat has an effect on our attitudes and on our dispositions. So if we eat carnivorous animals, not just carnivorous animals, but animals who tear apart that prey, then the aggression and the amount of savagery which is found in such an animal over a period of time gets transmitted to those who consume the meat of that animal as well. So because God wants to protect us from becoming savages and from becoming so aggressive, that He would not like us to eat the meat of these such animals. On the other hand, God allows us to eat the animals of herbivores, animals which eat grass or graze on grass or eat plants or vegetation, because in that case, of course, they are more docile, they're more submissive, and in that case, the effect that food has on us is not the same as the one that we face when we eat the meat of carnivorous animals.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Salman Aziz, please go ahead.
Sir, in Bible, book of Matthew, Jesus, peace be upon, says that if you are monotheist or you have faith equivalent to a grain of mustard, then if you say the mountain, it will move. Could you please explain this to me? And also, in another aspect, the same thing that we are in the habit of saying that, for example, if you're studying that, your advisor is almost or close to God. So saying such thing does become a sin of becoming a polytheist or not.
Your advisor is more close to God? What do you mean by that?
For example, if some elder is trying to make you understand that during PhD you take your advisor very seriously, so he can say that he is closer to God, you can say.
No, that's not at all. I mean, when you're taking your advisor seriously, all that you're doing is just trying to follow what he's telling you. as a teacher, and whether he's a PhD teacher or an
Just
ordinary
an
class
example,
teacher.
sir. Just an example that saying such words or doing such things lead us to polytheism or not, sir. And also about the
How
saying of
can I
Jesus,
mean?
what does it mean?
How can they? I mean, they do so because when you're following the advice of a teacher or a scholar or a person who's elderly to you, what are you doing? You're just following the advice of an elderly person based on wisdom. Again, that advice, which is against basic precepts of religion, is concerned, you'll not follow that. For example, if the advice is to do something evil or to do something immoral, you'll not accept it. So the advice itself is classified and qualified by things that are immoral. They shall not be done or carried out, even if your PhD supervisor says you to do that. And as far as the saying is concerned in the Gospel of Matthew, all that it tells us is that if you are strong in faith, then and determined, then at times things which are impossible to achieve, they become possible. So you see, we have to understand first that we don't have the original language of the Gospel. And secondly, of course, the translators do take liberty at times translating. So we have to have to make some sense out of a lot of statements. So when it was said that if you have a lot of faith, you'll be able to remove mountains, what perhaps Jesus was implying was that if you have that determination and strength of faith and you keep on doing what is required of you, then seemingly impossible tasks will be achieved by the help of God.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. I'll ask a really quick, short last question. So this is regarding Surah Isra, Ayah 4, which says, and we convey to the children of Israel in the scripture that you will surely cause corruption on the earth twice, and you will surely reach a degree of great haughtiness. Is this something that's happening right now, or is this referring to something that's already happened?
No, it's already happened. You just pick up any tafsir and it'll explain to you that the first time it happened was in the time of the Assyrian Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar in the 6th century BC, when he came and destroyed the temple. And the second time it happened was in 70 AD, when Titus, the Roman emperor, he came and destroyed the temple once again after it had been rebuilt. So this is what the Bani Israel or the Israelites were informed in the past, that twice they will commit this error of rebelliousness, and twice they shall be punished. And this has happened already.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Dr. Saleem. Thank you so much for giving us extra time, and thanks to all the participants for coming through and asking your questions. We still have questions that we didn't take, so again, please join us in the Islam Study Circle or towards the end of the textual study of the Quran to ask your non-topic related questions, or wait another month for the next Ask Dr. Saleem. Inshallah, we'll see you all again tomorrow in another session of textual study of the Quran. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.